I got to tell you, doing these webinars is a big adjustment for me because I'm used to doing in-person training and, feeding off your reaction. And all I'm doing right now, I mean, I can see Caitlin right here on my screen, and then a little camera up here. And anyways, but let me share my screen, and so we can get started here. All right. Can you see my screen now, Caitlin? You can see it?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. So folks, I've been asked today to give a talk on how to turn adversity into positive career traits. And I got to tell you, I'm no stranger to adversity. All my life, I've had to overcome a lot of obstacles. I'm the first in my family to go to college, and only one out of 10 siblings. My dad was a dishwasher. My mom worked in housekeeping. My dad, the furthest he got in school was first grade. My mom, middle school. They didn't speak English. The minute I learned how to speak English, which was in kindergarten, okay, so it was a little easier, I became their translator all their entire life. And most recently, in terms of overcoming some adversity, was obviously what happened back in mid-March with the whole shelter in place and what's going on with the coronavirus. Part of my business is to do trainings like this, and then also do some consulting work. In middle of March, all my trainings just got wiped out of my calendar. And so financially, I was just like, oh my gosh, like, what am I going to do? But thanks to the help of Angelica, my daughter, who's listening here as well, we've been able to make a change in our business. So I'm going to give you the things that I'm going to share with you folks, though, today are going to come from personal experience. I did not watch a YouTube video. I didn't read a book. Okay. I didn't listen to someone speak and like memorize word for word what they have to say. I've got the scars to prove it, and it's worked for me. And I believe that if you apply the things that I'm going to teach you, they will work for you as well. Now, feel free to send any questions via the chat. I will save some time at the end to answer your questions, okay? All right. So first off, in terms of turning adversity into positive career traits, I think one of the things that, first things that we need to do, it's critical, it is important, is we need to honor the past. What do I mean by honoring the past? I'm talking about honoring your past. See, folks, every single one of us has a story. I know what your organization does, and I just know that every single one of you has a story. Okay, some of us are proud of that story. Some of us are not. This is a picture of my dad, my little brother in the middle, and me on the far right. When in Mexico, my dad was a butcher, and when I was in 5th grade, one day my dad said, hey son, I want you to get the knives, the bucket, some towels ready. And every weekend for about 6-7 years, we would go to the slaughterhouses in Half Moon Bay, down in Morgan Hill, Gilroy, and we would literally slaughter a pig, a cow, a goat, and we would sell fresh meat the way they do it in like Mexico. Completely illegal, no health permit, okay? And I mean, think about it. I was like 11, 12 years old. All of a sudden, I just disappeared from my friends. And I used to play Little League Baseball and, cut my hand, so I couldn't play for a while. But my friends would ask me, like, hey, Oscar, how come you're not playing with us anymore on the weekends? What's up? And I'd be like, oh, you know what? Just, I'm busy. And they're like, doing what? Like, what are you busy? And I'm like, yeah, I'm just busy. No, what happened was that I was embarrassed to tell my friends that I was gutting a pig, a cow, etc. And I mean, some of you are probably looking at this picture and like grossed out. You're like, can you like move on to the next slide, Oscar? But see, here's the thing, folks. As much as I hated doing this and I was embarrassed to tell my friends, okay, when I look back at that experience, this is I learned some of the best life lessons from this. For example, I learned how to work hard. Guys, I mean, like at 11 years old, 12 years old, most of them are on their phone playing video games or talking to the virtual buddies, you know, with their headsets on, right? Back then it was watching cartoons, Saturday morning cartoons. My butt was up at 7 a.m. already helping my parents the whole weekend, okay? Next, working together as a team. I learned that. That's one of the skills that you need to learn as you get out into the quote unquote real world, right? We work together as a team. Another thing that I learned was delayed gratification. I remember I used to get mad at my parents because, like, you know, back then, middle school, whatever, my friends would have like a BMX bike or whatever, you know, the shiny new toy was at the time. And I remember one time saying to my parents, hey, I want a new bike, you know, a BMX bike. And my parents were like, no, you know, we can't afford it. I'm like, what do you mean you can't afford it? And they're like, yeah, we can't afford it. And the thing is that they actually could afford it, but what they did is they took money to reinvest it back into the business. And for me, I didn't understand that. And I used to get mad at my parents. I'm like, that's not fair. And see, today, I learned that concept of delayed gratification. If I want something, maybe I need to hold back. Guys, I'm gonna tell you something, okay? I don't even have a TV. I can afford to buy a TV. But the reason why I don't have a TV too is because it's a distraction. I know myself, right? Some of you have the latest iPhones, okay, whatever, and you can't hold back and maybe invest it in some books or something else, right? It's that delayed gratification that is super important. But again, I share the story because I'm willing to bet every single one of you has a story when you look back and some positive life lessons that you actually learned from that. Now, speaking of positive life lessons, folks, here's another thing that I encourage you to do in order to turn that adversity into positive career traits. We need to look for fertilizer. What do I mean by looking for fertilizer? Folks, every single one of us in here goes through challenges in life. Challenges stink, but challenges can also be fertilizer to our dreams. The choice is ours. How we react to the things that happen to us is our choice. I told you just 7-8 weeks ago, you know, a bunch of business got wiped out on my from my counter, right? And it's like, what did I do? Yeah, there were like a couple of days when I was stressed out, worried, but you know what I did? I got myself right back up, all right? I'm like, you know what? We're gonna work hard. I'm gonna tell you something, okay? Another thing. My mom, when she came to the US, she came here undocumented. The immigration apprehended her several times. Thank God she didn't quit, okay, because she still managed to cross the border. And because of that, I was able to be born in this country, all right? So you know what? I think back again, like I tell you, of the challenges that we go through, that my family goes through, I'm like, hell no, am I gonna be a quitter, all right? Here's the thing. One of the things that I believe is super critical in order for us to find that fertilizer is we need to let go of some of that baggage, okay? What do I mean by in terms of letting go of some of the baggage? Number one, we need to get rid of some of those preconceptions. My natural personality is an introvert, and I know probably none of you believe that because we have this idea that if we public speak, we're naturally an extrovert. Guys, doing what I'm doing right now, even though I'm doing it virtually via the webinar, it drains me. Those of you that are introverts, you know what I'm talking about, right? Because when you go up there and you give a talk, whether it's in class or whatever, it drains you, okay? And here I'm going to speak for about 30, 45 minutes or whatever. I'm going to be like pooped at the end. But growing up, my mom always used to say, oh, Oscar, he's so reserved, just like his uncle Robert, you know, he's so reserved. And so it was just like that label placed on me. Yeah, that's right. I am reserved. In college, I hated public speaking. We would have group assignments, and I would tell my group, hey, listen, guys, I will research the subject, I will write the paper, but when it comes to presenting in class, no way, you do that, okay? But we have to, again, like I said, get rid of those labels, those preconceptions that sometimes people place on us, sometimes we place it on ourselves. Another way, to get rid of some of that baggage is to always be learning. I know all of you are, you know, whatever, in school or, you know, learning new things. I mean, through the organization, right? They teach you a lot of things and you're like, oh my gosh, I can't wait, right? To like not have to read a book or whatever. I'm going to tell you something, okay? Most adults, once they graduate from college or high school or whatever, they stop reading, they stop learning. Always be learning, folks. One of the things that I do today is I fall asleep reading regular books, so I listen to audiobooks. In the last almost 4 years, I have listened to almost 70 audiobooks. I do it in the morning when I'm getting ready, okay? I just put on my Bluetooth, okay? And I listen to it. Now, some people will be like, well, geez, Oscar, you know, you're like doing audiobooks. Like, what is your retention? I don't know, Fred, maybe it's 10%. See, Oscar, it's not that much. Well, gee, Fred, it's more than your zero. Like, what's your next excuse? Always be learning. Next, association. This is also really important. Now, again, I'm a dad. My daughter's 23, my son is 22, and today, and even when they were younger, right? As a parent, you're always worried about who your kids hang out with. Because of that, you know, we always want them to have that positive influence. I'm going to tell you something. I don't care if you are 16, if you are 50, or if you're 100 years old, or in between, whatever. Who you associate with is very, very important. Some of us need to cut off some of the people that we're hanging out with. The sad thing is, and I don't know why this is, but some of our biggest critics sometimes ends up being our family. I get it, right? So you have to be very careful who you surround yourself with. I mean, I want to be around people that are ambitious, that are going somewhere, that are positive. I don't want to be hanging out with some, you know, person that's constantly dragging me down. Like, geez, I don't want to be hanging out with someone that has some emotional cold on them. Catch their emotional disease? No way. And then lastly, folks, self-talk. This is also very important. We talk to ourselves the most, right? Oftentimes, what we say to ourselves is negative self-talk, right? Oh, you know what? Like, you know, what is today? I don't even know what day it is. Today's Wednesday, okay? But watch, Friday comes around, you're going to get some messages, text messages, or maybe through Facebook or whatever, right? Oh, TGIF. Maybe you are going to be saying that. TGIF. You know, can I tell you something? I don't let the day of the week dictate my attitude. I'm just as fired up on Monday as I am on Friday, and I'm just as ticked off on Friday as I am on Monday. I don't let the calendar dictate my attitude. Why? Because I'm always protecting what I'm feeding myself and talking to myself. Positive, all right? Next, self-improvement. Sometimes people say, geez, Oscar, you know, like, how is it that you can be an introvert and do public speaking and like be an international speaker? This is how, because 25 plus years ago, when I graduated from college, I used to see my good friend Will Rivera in college. He was my best buddy in college. That dude could get up and like speak just like that on whatever topic for 30 minutes. And I used to like admire him. I'm like, damn, how does Will do that, man? I couldn't. I get all tongue-tied. My mouth would get cotton mouth and all that type of stuff. But see, here's the thing. I didn't like being that way. And so what I started to do is get myself into a personal growth and development program. Again, reading self-help books. Back then it was cassettes, then CDs, videos, etc. And just growing. In fact, you guys, I'm going to tell you something. I could actually shut up right here in my talk, my webinar, and if you just do this, everything else will take care of itself. But rarely do we think about this. We're always thinking of like, tell me how to fill out my resume. Tell me how to fill out my LinkedIn profile. Oh my gosh, what's the best way to do a mock interview? You want to know the best way to do all those things is to believe in yourself. And the way to believe in yourself is to, again, put yourself in a personal growth and development program. Next, folks, be a giver, not a taker. Help others. I know it's challenging when we are the greatest need out there, right? I just told you, 2 months ago, my cash flow just like disappeared because of the coronavirus. You know what I did? I buckled down together, my daughter and I, and we went out there and we helped more and more people, even though I needed the money too as well. And guess what? Here's the thing. The more positive, the more good seeds you plant out there, the more positive you will harvest. You got to give to grow, folks. And then next is always be building those relationships, okay? One of the things, and I don't get into, it's a totally separate talk on networking, okay? But one of the challenges that many of us, I don't care if you're a young professional or if you're an old fart like myself, is like, how do I like network? You guys, we overcomplicate networking. As an introvert, this is what I eventually came down to, and I'm like, okay, you know what networking really is being a friend. It's like being a friend to you. All I can do is control what I can control, and that is I can stick my hand out. Hi, I'm Oscar Garcia. And if you respond back, great. And if you don't, I'm okay with that too, because I can't force you to be my friend. Okay, I have no control over that. And when you are a friend to someone, some of those people will reciprocate, just like Caitlin and I, right? You end up building that friendship over time. You get to develop that credibility, that trust, etc. And guess what? The day that you need something, you can tap into your network, your relationships. Hey, can you recommend me to this opportunity? Hey, I have a question about this, etc., and so forth. So always be building and creating those relationships, folks. Okay, I want to. Caitlin asked me that she wanted me to talk to you about LinkedIn and how you can take some of that, again, some of those challenges that we go through in life and apply it to like LinkedIn. Now, some of you might be thinking like, Oscar, why do I need to be on LinkedIn? You don't have to. You don't. Okay. But you know what? One of the things that I learned, okay, in college is if I want to get a good grade, I'm going to do what people do to get good grades. So if you want a job and you don't want to be panhandling for your next opportunity, get on LinkedIn and learn how to use it. Okay. So here we go, folks. Do some of these, look familiar, social media? Of course they do. Some of you are probably right now like on Snapchat, okay? Or TikTok, making a little TikTok video and like playing my webinar on the side, okay? So that you can get credit, all right? But you're not even really paying attention. And that's okay. I'm not criticizing you. My point though is that I bet every single one of you watching this webinar, you know how to share content on these social media channels. What you need to learn is how to polish that content, those videos, those posts, those photos that you're taking, and apply it onto a platform like LinkedIn that will help you find your next internship, your next job opportunity. Just kind of clean it up, all right? Now, LinkedIn, I want you to think of it as a career journey blog. Now, we all know what a blog is, right? Okay, now think about this. Like last year, I traveled to Panama and to do some training out there. Never been there, and so right, I went online and was reading on some blogs, YouTube, just a bunch of different places. And here's the thing: if we go to a blog, and the last time that blog was updated was maybe, I don't know, 6 months ago, we're going to kind of wonder like how relevant this information is, right? Now we might give it a second chance and go back, whatever, a day or two, a week later. And if it still hasn't been updated, then we're going to be like, yeah, you know what? See you later. Okay. Like, peace out. Okay. I'm going to go somewhere else. Career journey is because everything that you have been doing to this point, I don't care if you've been working at Starbucks. I don't care if you've been working at the flea market. I don't care if you've been slaughtering pigs, okay, like I did. It's all part of your career story journey. In a career journey blog, because you got to keep it current. Now, another reason for why it's important to be on LinkedIn and learn how to use that is because as a young professional, this is not my statistics, okay? This is according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Most of you in your lifetime are going to have 10 to 15 jobs. Sometimes it could be because you just choose to move on. Sometimes the company shuts down. Like who would have, right? Imagine coronavirus hitting and look how many millions of people have been laid off, right? People are all happy, oh yeah, I have job security. That doesn't really exist anymore, folks. Also, okay, remember I told you about building those relationships? Listen, when you apply for a job online, you have a 3% chance of getting hired. Of getting an interview, okay? A 3% chance of getting an interview by applying online. But if someone refers you to an opportunity and they're at a director level or higher, you have a 91% chance of getting hired if they refer you. And I look back at my own personal journey, and that's exactly what's happened. I mean, I've been referred to many opportunities, and it's just like made my life so much easier. Okay, let's talk about optimizing your LinkedIn profile, some of the things that you need to do. So I'm going to get to some of the basics, okay, and then get into a little bit kind of some advanced things. Number one, folks, okay, is what I want you to do is add a professional looking photo. Just, you don't have to get a professional photographer. Just with your cell phone, use the back camera because it has higher resolution. Have someone take a picture of you, kind of headshot, and smile. The reason why I'm telling you to smile is because you come across friendly, all right, when you smile. Some of you think you know, smile, you look at your pictures, I'm like, I don't know, man, that's not true. Like one of the things that cracks me up about my family, you know, I'm Mexican, obviously, okay? So one thing that cracks me up when I look at pictures of my family, like in Mexico, I'm like, how come no one ever smiles? Like, I don't know what that is. I'm gonna have to do some research, you know, what is it about us? And it's not just about my family, okay? But it's kind of, I think, a cultural thing. I don't know, all right? But smile, because you come across friendly. Next, right underneath your name, that rectangle box that you see is what LinkedIn calls a headline. Another way to think of it is like a tagline or a short phrase. Obviously, if I say just do it, Nike comes to mind, right? Now, if you are kind of wondering, like, what can I say? I'm going to give you something really, really simple way to add there. Think of what it is that you might be interested in career-wise. And let's say, I don't know, let's just say you want to be a software developer. You can put there aspiring software developer, aspiring software developer. Okay, the word aspiring is obviously very powerful. If you don't change it, the default becomes whatever your last position or your most current position is. Excuse me. So if you're working at Starbucks as a barista, it's going to say barista. And see, that's not what you want to say, because that is not promoting yourself, marketing yourself to opportunities. Next, there's a section, your summary or your about section. This is where you talk a little bit about your career journey, and I'm going to give you some examples, okay? Now, I'm going to be honest with you. This area is going to be probably the most challenging part to complete. But I want you to write it as if it was a personal story, kind of first person. Imagine you and I are meeting for the first time, whatever, at Starbucks or, you know, through a Zoom call. I'm like, hey, John, you know, so tell me about yourself. Well, Oscar, you know what? I'm going to be a freshman at, you know, UC Berkeley. I'm going to be majoring in this. And the reason why I want to major in this is because blah, 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 etc. Right? That's how we would talk. Now, on the bottom right, you're going to see 3 questions that I encourage you to answer. Number 1 is, who are you? By that, I mean, what are some of your personality traits? Number 2, what do you do? Again, that's your career journey so far. You can go back, you know, high school. Hey, you know what? In high school, I was involved in this, okay? And I'm doing this right now, and I want to do this in the future. And then lastly, talk about your why. What's your passion? What's your cause? What's your belief? To continue with that software developer example, why do you want to be a software developer? Okay. Now, let me share with you an example here of Angelica. So Angelica, as you can see, right underneath her name, she wants to be ethnic studies professor, aspiring professor of ethnic studies. Very clear, right? What she wants to do. Her about section says, I'm a master's student at San Jose State who aspires to one day become a professor of ethnic studies. My goal as a future educator is to help create an engaging, creative, and strong educational foundation for future generations. My passion for education has been an ongoing cause that has led me to volunteer for organizations such as Mesa de la Comunidad and Aspira. By pursuing my passion for academia, I hope to expand my horizons and gain more insight into a world of limitless possibilities. Now, folks, she answers the 3 questions that I mentioned earlier, but the other key thing is, obviously she has no experience being a college professor, but is she selling her vision of where she wants to go? And see, one of the common questions that I get from young professionals such as yourselves is, Oscar, I have no experience. How do I compete with someone like you that has a lot of experience? By selling your vision of where you want to go. Because I'm going to tell you, okay, old farts like myself, we also don't know how to market ourselves. So what that we have a lot of experience? If we don't know how to share that experience, market ourselves, so what, right? All of a sudden, Angelica comes around and she's like very succinctly, boom, this is what I want to do, this is why I want to do it, and this is where I'm going to go in the future. I mean, I don't know about you, but I'm like, damn, like, man, she's badass. Let me talk to her, right? And see, the first key to getting hired, first step to getting hired is to get the interview. But in order to get the interview, you have to learn how to market yourself, how to sell yourself. Next, there's a section where you add your educational experience, obviously whatever, high school, college that you're going to or that you went to. I do encourage you, if you are in pursuing a career in kind of the technical software developer or like accounting, those things that are very specific kind of niche areas, make sure that you highlight some of the specific courses that if you've taken any in college, okay? Next, work experience. Obviously, you're going to list the name of the company you work for. I want you to write 1 or 2 sentences describing what that company does. Don't assume everyone knows what it is. And then to save you some time, do a Google search for job descriptions of the position you currently have and past positions. Why? Because like I said, you're going to save yourself some time. Number 2, I'm not a professional writer of job descriptions. I mean, there's people in human resources that do know how to do that. And it's going to help you use relevant terminology. For example, for the longest time, I co-founded a nonprofit, and for the longest time, I used to refer to myself as co-founder. And then like 7, 8 years ago, I started hearing the phrase social entrepreneur. I'm like, what is social entrepreneur? I looked it up. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's me. So guess what? I changed it, right? But social entrepreneur. Also, if you have examples of your work, multimedia, whether it's photos, videos, etc., add them. Now, you might be thinking, okay, but I don't have anything, Oscar. You know what? If you can right now, again, I'm assuming all of us here, all of you are shelter in place. So obviously it's a little hard. Hey, if you're doing some work on your laptop, whatever, hey, have someone, I don't know, family member, your boyfriend or girlfriend or whomever, take a picture of you while you're like on your laptop or something, doing some work, and share that, upload it. The reason I tell you this is because it's common sense that whenever you fill out your resume or your LinkedIn profile, we're all going to say positive things about ourselves. So if everyone's saying positive things, what becomes a differentiator? Examples of your work. So add that. Also, I want to share with you some examples of how we can translate some non-traditional work experience to sound more professional. So on the left, okay, let's say you're like, well, Oscar, you know what? I haven't really worked, okay, like regular job, et cetera, and so forth, because, I had to babysit, my little brother, sister, my cousins, to help out the family, we don't have enough money, whatever. So, okay, so you're a family babysitter. Well, guess what? On your LinkedIn profile, on your resume, you can say childcare provider, right? That's like the professional way to say it. Next example is, like I did this. I told you I was my family's translator, right? So guess what? On your LinkedIn profile, on your resume, you can say interpreter, translator. Here's another example, okay? So I help with my family business, okay? That's a traditional way to explain it. But on my LinkedIn profile, depending on exactly what it is I did, maybe it's operations manager or, or doing some sales or whatever, okay? But again, it's a way to take this non-traditional work experience and translate it into so that it is professional sounding. Also, what I encourage you to do is look up, like I told you earlier, some job descriptions. Here's an example. I just went onto Google and I typed in job description to be a translator. And I was reading, kind of like some of the primary responsibilities. And this highlighted area in the box, it says, facilitate effective communication between two parties that do not speak a similar language by converting one spoken or written language to another. And I thought, oh my gosh, like I've been doing this since I was in kindergarten, but the way they describe it sounds so professional, right? So that's what I mean by doing a Google search and looking at these job descriptions, because it can help you frame and say things much more professionally instead of like a translator, okay? Interpreter, whatever. All right. Next, there is a section on your LinkedIn profile for skills and endorsement. Skills section is, listen, doesn't mean that you are a professional, like you're an expert, meaning, okay? I don't care if it's the first time that you've done whatever, public speaking, put that in there. Over time, right, the more and more you do it and the more your network sees stuff about you doing public speaking, they will endorse you. Endorsing means like, yes, I vouch for Oscar that he's, a good public speaker. And so you start adding these skills. And the reason also this is important is because the algorithm in LinkedIn will pick up your skills, because when someone goes in and looks for your profile, they're going to type in some of these skills, and hopefully you've listed them, and then also hopefully you have a number of people that have endorsed you for them. Next, volunteer experience. Very important as well, especially as you're starting off in your career. When I was in college, I did volunteer work when I was in school, and I put that on my resume. And so sure enough, when I went for interviews and stuff, they looked at my volunteer experience and also my summer job experience that I did. But same thing, list the name of the organization, brief description of what it does, and talk about your roles and responsibility there. Also, if you are a member of any organization, make sure you list that as well on your LinkedIn profile. And then if you speak other languages, LinkedIn allows us not only to say that what language we speak, but we can also indicate our level of proficiency. And then lastly, recommendations, okay? These are very important. You do need to be connected with people in order for them to write your recommendation. You can solicit recommendations from anyone in your network. You can solicit them from Caitlin, or, if you have another career counselor, coworkers, your current past managers, professors, teachers, etc., executive directors at a nonprofit, or anyone, right, that knows you as a person. Now, when you reach out to someone for a recommendation, you have three options. Number one, accept the recommendation as is, and it goes onto your profile. Number two, ask them to make some changes. Tell them what those changes are. And then number three, you can flat out reject the recommendation. So you are in total control as to what shows up on your profile. The last thing that I want to say with regards to recommendations is that try to get recommendations where it paints kind of more of a holistic picture of who you are, not just in one area, meaning leadership, public speaking, if that's what you do, or maybe it's your research skills, etc. Okay. All right. I want to next talk about being active on the platform. Okay. A lot of people treat LinkedIn like a gym membership. Yep. Okay. They set it up and then they don't use it. Okay. It's like those people at the beginning of the year. Yeah, I'm going to get healthy. I'm going to get in shape. And like, I hated the beginning of the year going to the gym, right? Because it was crowded, even at 5:30 in the morning. And then all of a sudden I remembered, I'm like, Oscar, just wait until February 22nd. Okay. Because all those wannabes are going to stop showing up to the gym. Sure enough. Okay. Well, people set up their LinkedIn account and then they don't use it, or they just use it as an online resume. Okay. Don't do that. Always stay active on it. Now, in terms of what you can do, as far as content, let me help you out. I encourage you, not just on LinkedIn, but actually across the board on social media, that you use the rule of thirds. The rule of thirds says that a third of what you share on social media or LinkedIn should be about your personal brand. Your personal brand is what you want people to think of you right? So again, software developer, share stuff about what it's like about coding, programming, or the latest thing, right? Because that's how you want to market yourself, all right? Number two, areas of interest. Okay, you want to go into accounting or whatever, marketing or whatever, or social work or whatever it is, share some stuff about that industry. And then number three, share other people's content, okay? Folks, we already do that on other platforms, okay, right? Like, especially right now, I mean, my family, right? I send, memes, about coronavirus or videos or this and that, right? And we're like, it's funny. And they are funny, all right? So if you do that already on some of these other social media platforms, also do it here. The reason why, for example, on LinkedIn is because it's a nice, subtle way to stay top of mind with your network as well. Now, where do you find content? Number one, I encourage you to create some news alerts, like Google News alerts for key areas that are of interest to you. You can also use an app, it's free, Flipboard, where you can set up certain hashtags like keywords, and every time there's an article with those keywords, it goes into the app, and then you can just kind of peruse and find content there. Also, you can cross share from one platform to the other. Sometimes, like I'll take a screenshot of something on Instagram and I'll share it on LinkedIn, or LinkedIn to Instagram, or Twitter. Those are the three platforms that I'm on: LinkedIn, Twitter, and Instagram. Also, hashtags. I know many of you already know hashtags, especially on Facebook and Instagram, okay? Same thing on LinkedIn. You can follow certain hashtags. You can tag your posts with certain hashtags as well. And then lastly, folks, create content yourself. I mentioned in the beginning, right? I showed that slide with YouTube, Snapchat, and all that stuff as Twitter. I know you guys are really good. If I look at your Instagram account, Facebook accounts, I can see that you guys are like very creative, all right, on creating content. But like I said, in this case, you need to just kind of clean it up. And I'm going to show you some examples. So on the upper right, that's a picture of me. Obviously, someone took that picture. I was public speaking, and I just added my own little quote, right? And I share that on LinkedIn. On the upper left is a slide deck that I created, just some tips to help startups when they're doing some community outreach. Just my own opinion, okay? On the bottom, I created that infographic, okay, to help nonprofits use LinkedIn when to fundraise, okay? Very simple. Again, these are just some examples, things that it's my opinion that I share out there. Also, when you're creating content, don't just create content for the sake of creating content. It's like those people on social media, these platforms where like they just spew off their mouth, right? And like no one really ever pays any attention. No, the goal is to create that engagement, okay? And let me show you some examples. So Blessing, I'm not connected to her, but I saw her, this show up on my feed on LinkedIn. All she did was take a picture of herself in front of the LinkedIn logo. And she shared this post and she's like, 9 months ago, students were questioning my presence on LinkedIn. Now they're asking me for advice on how to get started, et cetera, and so forth. And if you notice on the bottom right, she's got over 2,400, she got over 2,400 likes and almost 160 comments when I took the screenshot, right? I mean, here's the thing, on LinkedIn, you're gonna get a lot less number of people engaged than you will on some of these other social media platforms. But listen, folks, I'd rather have 10 people, business professionals, comment on my post than 100 knuckleheads on Facebook, okay? Here's another example about, this guy, again, I'm not connected to Brian. He came across through my feed, and I read his post, and the guy got an internship at Accenture, right? But what caught my attention was what he said there that's underlined. He's like, my father grew up in the Adirondacks, working and living in a small restaurant with his family. He never graduated high school and has done hard physical labor his whole life to support us. My mother used to bounce checks to feed my three brothers and I. And I was kind of like, damn, this guy like takes some guts to like be telling the world about his mother breaking the law, bouncing checks and stuff like that. And I was just like, wow. And again, on the bottom right, you see almost 1,600 likes, 125 comments when I took the screenshot, right? And this is on LinkedIn. Some of you, are amazing storytellers, right? On Instagram, I see some because I follow certain people and they tell us amazing stories and it's great. I'm not saying not to do it there, but take that story as well and share it here on this platform as well. Share some of your vulnerability. Video is also very, very important, as you know, and I want to share with you a quick little video here. So you guys, I shared this video on LinkedIn and a couple of other social media platforms, and some people were like, what? Oscar, on a professional platform, you told people that your mother was undocumented, that English is your second language, and that you were on the free and reduced lunch? Yeah, I did. Why would you do that, Oscar? Because it's my story. I can't change it. I don't want to change it. It's made me who I am. If you don't like my video, don't watch it. If it really bothers you, unfollow me, unfriend me, whatever the heck LinkedIn calls it, because I don't give a rip. See, folks, here's the thing: is that being uh, vulnerable, okay? It's not a sign of weakness. It takes courage. It takes strength. And see, on one end of the spectrum are some of you, right, that grown up with the internet, etc., and you like put everything out there, right? I broke up with my boyfriend, my girlfriend. She said this, I said this to her, blah, 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 dropping the F-bomb and all that type of stuff. And then on the other end of the spectrum is the 40 and older, my generation and older, right? Where we grew up, like my dad, hey son, don't you dare air out our dirty laundry. Don't you dare tell people that I used to beat the what out of you. Oh, okay, Dad, I won't. And see, either way, either end of the spectrum, you can't tell you're an onion. There's a happy medium, folks, okay? And being vulnerable is a process, okay? It is a process. I am not here to tell you to just jump off the cliff and do it. But folks, and I don't mean this out of disrespect, okay? But if you're a young guy willing to show your six-pack, or a young gal willing to show your booty shots on Instagram, and you're afraid to tell some of your personal story in a professional way on LinkedIn, I don't know, guys, okay? Because, being vulnerable, like I said, it's not a weakness, it is a strength. I'm going to leave you with this, and I'm going to open it up with some questions because I see that there's some questions from you guys, okay? Folks, don't aim to impress others. Don't aim to impress others. Inspire them through your imperfections. We all have imperfections. You're looking at me, probably have a nose hair hanging out or something, okay? If I saw you in person, guess what? I would be pointing out some imperfections too. I mean, I wouldn't tell you because I'm not that way, but probably would have noticed because I notice a lot of things, okay? So we're even, all right? So, Caitlin, I'm going to open it up to some questions.
Great, thank you. So let's look at the chat box. All right, so what are some specific books that you recommend in general for personal growth and development?
One of my favorite books is The Magic of Thinking Big. And that book, one of the things that I got out of it and that I did, it asked me to write my own personal commercial of where I saw myself in the future. And I did that. And I read my little personal commercial for like 7 years straight, like 3 times a day, in the morning, on the way to work, lunchtime, on the way home, etc. And I remember one of the things that I said is like, Oscar, you have a magnetic personality, you inspire people. And this is when like, I was like super shy, okay? Like my daughter can vouch, okay, for that, all right? And I kept doing it, kept reading it. And today, that's one of the things that part of the feedback that I get from people, like, oh my gosh, Oscar, like you're so energetic. How do you do it? That's how I do it, okay? Reading those. So that's a really great book that I encourage you to read.
Awesome, thanks for that suggestion. The next question, do you recommend using personal stories for some behavioral interview questions? So behavioral interview questions are the ones, that kind of force you to recall like an experience to showcase skills and things.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. Yes, I encourage you to use personal stories in general to connect with people. You're gonna forget 90% of the technical stuff about LinkedIn, okay? But what's gonna stick is probably some part of my story. Okay, maybe it's introvert, like what? I can't believe that dude. Maybe it's the video, my mom being undocumented, or me being an ESL kid, or maybe me speaking with the lisp, whatever. It's those stories, okay? And here's the thing, folks about stories. It's about what is the lesson? Tell me what you went through. What is the lesson that you learned? How did you overcome those challenges? That's the story, the scenario. So definitely, I mean, whenever you can, use stories to highlight and address some of those behavioral questions.
Yeah, I definitely think that storytelling allows you to kind of just connect the dots too in a way that might not be so obvious from just looking at your resume or cover letter. So I definitely echo what you're saying. Another question, how many recommendations is the right amount to have? I'm assuming on LinkedIn.
Yeah, if you're just starting off, and that's the approach. I'm going to take it from that standpoint. I would get anywhere from 5 to 10 recommendations current. I mean, over time, like in my case, I've been on LinkedIn for a while now, whatever, I don't know, 10 years or so. And I have some old recommendations, and, the older recommendations, people don't really look at them. But yeah, 5 to 10 recommendations would be great. And I'm going to also tell you one thing about those recommendations. Because I noticed this, and you can check this out too. You will notice that a lot of business professionals that have been in the workforce for 15, 20 or more years have very few recommendations, if any, okay? And same thing, endorsements of their skills. And for example, with the recommendations, when I see that in a professional, it tells me one of two things. Either A, the person is not active on LinkedIn, or B, they're not good at what they do, so people aren't willing to recommend them. And because I don't know that person, like, where should I go? They're not active, or they're horrible at what they do, and no one's willing to vouch. So therefore, for you, even just getting 5 recommendations, you're gonna be golden.
Yeah, and I've also found like a really great way to kind of approach that conversation is by also offering yourself to write a recommendation for that person or endorse their skills. It's kind of just like a nice give and take
Yeah.
because obviously you don't want to just keep asking for things.
Yes.
Um, and then the last question I see here is how do you actively act on lessons in books?
How do you what?
How do you actively act on lessons in books? So I'm assuming it's the self-help kind of personal growth related books. Like how do you act on the lessons that you're reading about and learning about?
See if I understand the question. How do you act? You mean how do you take action? I think is that what they're asking.
Yeah.
So, guys, if you haven't figured it out, okay, or it doesn't come across, I'm a very simple person. I do not like to complicate things. I used to complicate things. I used to need to read the entire manual upside down, and all that, do all this research. And you know what? The truth is, I would get analysis paralysis. I wouldn't do anything. And so, what I encourage you to do in terms of acting is just take little baby steps. I mentioned earlier in my case, about, audiobooks. I mean, if you're not used to at all any type of reading, hey, maybe the first step is download the app. That's it. Victory. Then, maybe the next week is doing some research on some books. Okay, fine. Week number 3, maybe you actually download a book. And then week number 4, you actually listen to it. Maybe it's for a minute or so. But even those little baby steps will you will succeed over the long run. And I'll tell you why I say this as little baby steps. Because remember I told you earlier about how in college, my friend Will Rivera. Well, there's some other friends that I looked up to because they were very extroverted, outgoing. I used to it. And today I'm still in touch with some of those. And today they while I have grown and out there and internationally do trainings and stuff like that as an introvert, got out of my shell, you know what they've done? They closed up. They don't even do a like. All right? It's closed up. And so my point is, hey, it's that tortoise and the hare. Take little baby steps, and over time, you're going to be way ahead from someone that didn't do anything.
Great. Yeah, that's great advice. Just making digestible steps that you can actually do instead of making goals for yourself that maybe are a little bit out there
Yeah.
as far as self-help and growth is concerned. Great. So if there's not any other questions, then I think that is it. Oscar, thank you again so much for taking time out of your day to join us today. I really, really appreciate it. You shared some really great advice, and I'm sure that our students are walking away feeling like they learned something. So thank you so much.
Got it.
And students, thank you so much for joining. Until next time, I hope you guys all take care. Thank
All right.
you.
Everyone. Bye bye.
Bye.